Shall we begin?
Why not? Welcome to Frankie Sense and More. It's like she's got a whole lot of goodness for you with a little bit of sass.
Frankie, did you just say...
She sure did. Not to mention, along with...
Whoops.
Join us now as Frankie Picasso and her new co-host mix it up with authors, musicians, and interviews with world-changing people.
Let's begin now.
Okay, let's begin now, because it only makes sense.
Shall we begin?
Why not? Welcome to Frankie Sense and More. It's like she's got a whole lot of goodness for you with a little bit of sass.
Frankie, did you just say...
She sure did. Not to mention, along with...
Whoops.
Join us now as Frankie Picasso and her new co-host mix it up with authors, musicians, and interviews with world-changing people.
Let's begin now.
Okay, let's begin now, because it only makes sense.
And welcome to Frankie Sense and More. Welcome to 2016. Happy New Year, everybody. And may your lives be blessed with good health, prosperity, and loads of love. Please take that love and show it to others this year. Make 2016 the year we become conscious and look for ways to help the people, the planet, the animals, those who need us the most. Frankie Sense and More is part of the Good Radio Network, and as a socially conscious talk radio show, you guys know it's my mission to keep reminding you that together we can make changes in the world. We don't have to make grand gestures. We just need to stand up and give voice, money, a bit of time to affect change. My two guests today know all about how to affect the world. But first, let's check in with my co-host today, rlee. rlee, it's a Canadian show today. You're going to feel a little bit funny.
Hey,
how are you?
I'm used to feeling funny.
Yeah. How's Mexico?
It's been really cold. We've had a cold front, and that is very unusual for us here. And as you may know, most of us don't have heat in the house because we don't need it. So when the temperature drops to 40 degrees, we all freeze to death.
Oh, my gosh. That's awful.
And I know from your perspective, that's probably a heat wave.
Yes. Yeah, we had a super warm Christmas, as the other Canucks will tell you on the line. It was just really kind of strange, felt weird. It was very warm. Like you could wear shorts almost. Anyway, I've got a few fabulous updates about our project partners I want to get in before we start the show. Owie Bow Wowie, she's celebrating his 29th birthday. And in honor of this, founder Gina Woods has set up a new campaign called Toodaloo to Loneliness. Did you know that each year over 20 million children are hospitalized and nearly 8 million of these kids have no family or friends who are able to visit them? It's really sad. So if you go to the Good Radio Network on Facebook, or you go to www.crowdrise.com/ILoveOwie, you can participate in that campaign. Just give $1. You know, we're going to be sending a whole host of Owie Bow Wowies to a hospital in somewhere in California. I can't remember the name of the hospital at the moment, but each of the Owies is a comfort companion, and he comes with a book. He comes with a Band-Aid on him. He's a plush 12-inch dog who is approved and therapeutically designed for these kids who have long-term stays in hospitals. And he also comes with his blanket and a reusable carrying bag, and he's always delivered with a hug, and the kids just love him because there's nobody else to go to x-rays with them or take blood with them. They get to hold their Owie, and it's just amazing. Also, an Active Dog Museum of Compassion. They still need our help to make this a reality, and Mark Barone has given up 4 years of his life to work on this project. He's painted 5,500 portraits of real dogs who have been killed in shelters across the USA. 5,500, the number of how many are killed daily. And Mark and Marina's Museum of Compassion will house all of his paintings. Now imagine, it's going to take up 2 football fields. Crazy. It's going to be amazing, a legacy that's going to live on and continue to save the lives of these wonderful animals. So please go to www.anactivedog.org, purchase one of his giclées or night lights. I've got 8 night lights in my house of these dogs, and I absolutely love them. So it's pretty cool. I hear some beeping. I got to look in my window here. I don't know what. Green, I can't see the window. I'm sorry. You have to go to the other window. Today, as usual, we are aligning ourselves with the United Nations global goals, and today's goal is appropriately number 15, life on land. So go to www.globalgoals.org, and you can help too. We closed 2016 speaking with Mark the Vet, who we love, and I'm excited to open 2016 with another man I already love, my next guest, Rob Laidlaw. You know, Rob is passionate. He's an advocate and an activist for those who are giving a voice. You know, he's giving a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. For their own behalf, the wild animals of the world. He is a chartered biologist, executive director of wildlife protection charity Zoocheck, a small Canadian-based international wildlife protection campaign charity that he established in 1984 to promote and protect the interests and well-being of wild animals. He's the author of these amazing 7 books, children's books, about wildlife and animal welfare issues, which I think you can never start too young. And for more than 35 years, he's either conducted or participated in a broad range of wildlife protection and animal welfare campaigns. Now, he also, I love this, he is a 2014 recipient of the Canadian Federation of Humane Societies, the Frederick A. McGrant Award for significant contribution to animal welfare in Canada. And they had to say about Rob has demonstrated a relentless dedication and commitment to improving animal welfare in Canada and around the world. He has spent more than 30 years working to protect animals of all kinds. And throughout the ups and downs, he's never lost his hope that he can directly impact things for the betterment of all animals. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you for having me on the show.
What a legacy. Fantastic. Wow. So, you know, some of the first things I noticed about Zoocheck, it's based in Toronto. That's pretty cool. And I'm just wondering, you know, one of the campaigns that I had spoken to, I guess I don't know if it's your partner or assistant about, was the wild horses in Alberta. And I know that we want to talk about the elephants because that's just so sad. Where do you want to start? I'm happy to start anywhere with you.
Oh, God, that's a very difficult question, but I guess given the broad continuum of things we've been involved in, you can pick any one of them, so why not wild horses?
Yeah, why not wild horses? You know, it's kind of fun because our next guest, Dean McTaggert, has a song called Dark Horse, which is appropriate. Not about horses, but appropriate, nevertheless. So let's talk about the wild horses. What is going on? Why does the Alberta government want to kill horses?
Well, that's a very good question. I think ultimately, like many other issues, it comes down to the politics of the issue. You have certain people within society. In Alberta, it's primarily ranchers and some of the forestry community and a few other people like that are basically aligned or involved in industries that use the land or extract resources from the land. And they see the horses as a bit of a nuisance. And what they do is they perpetuate this idea that horses are invasive, they shouldn't be there, and that they're damaging the environment. But unfortunately, while those particular ideas have gained traction, particularly within government, they're false. They don't stand up to scrutiny. There's no evidence that horses are causing any problems whatsoever. And in fact, our position is that they should be considered as native wildlife because they co-evolved in that habitat. In fact, horses emerged in North America before spreading to other parts of the world, and they can serve very beneficial ecological functions on the landscape. So the whole thing is really not science-based. It's unethical, and it's all to do with politics more than with the reality on the ground and these animals themselves. So, you know, that's wrong, and there are very few people out there in an organized way challenging these kinds of issues, and we're the type of group that doesn't shy away from that. We don't care if an animal is particularly photogenic or cuddly or whatever. If it's unfair and the system is working against them, then we feel they deserve a voice. And that's why we get involved in a lot of issues where it's animals that the big groups like World Wildlife Fund and Canadian Wildlife Federation, they don't touch. You know, we like to get involved in those issues, and we like to work the politics of issues as well to try to come out with some resolution that is in favor of the animals.
So I think there were maybe 880 feral horses. Is that what they're saying? Around 880, and they wanted to capture 60. Like, what's that? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
Well, they've got various management zones, horse management zones, and within those zones, which, depending on how you measure them, can be between 10 and 20,000 square kilometers of landscape, there are an estimated, and the latest count is actually 770 horses, and they're claiming they're causing ecological damage. Now, it's kind of crazy because this is a landscape that's riddled with roads, ATV trails, clear cuts, gas wells, oil pipelines, you name it, it's in there. And when you add into that mix, hundreds of thousands of cattle, it's kind of ludicrous that 770 horses spread over 10 to 20,000 square kilometers could cause any damage at all. You could put in 770 elephants and not see any damage. But what they've done is they're trying to placate the extraction people that don't want the horses by saying, okay, we'll collect up some of them under the Stray Animals Act, this permitting process, and hopefully that will satisfy the ranching community. And by not collecting them all up, by leaving some on the landscape, hopefully that will satisfy all these animal rights Looney Tunes that are out there complaining about it. So they're trying to walk this middle line. But like I said, it's not science-based, it's not ethical. If they're going to manage the horses, and we agree they should be managed, they shouldn't be managing their numbers down. They should be managing their numbers way up because of the beneficial ecological attributes of having horses on the landscape.
Well, maybe you can help us there. What are the benefits to having the horses there?
Well, there's all kinds of benefits. We dealt with this actually in the 90s as well with a large population of horses on Canadian Forces Base Suffield near Medicine Hat, Alberta. And during that time, they were saying the same things, that horses are damaging the environment and all that, and there was no evidence to show that that was in fact true. And when you look at what the horses actually do on the landscape, they fulfill the niches, the ecological niches that existed previously as they evolved with the landscape. So they can actually be beneficial to vegetation in that, the way that they forage leads to regeneration. In the wintertime, they can break open water holes in ponds and in streams when there's ice so that other animals can then access fresh liquid water. They create trails in the forest that other animals follow, so that's a benefit. I
got to stop you there, Rod, because we're about to go to a commercial break. But when we come back, we're going to find out more about the animals, and we're going to be Dean, and we're going to have everybody come in the conversation. So that would be wonderful. Then. So stay tuned and stay close, because we're coming right back in just a second. Thank you.
No, we're just getting warmed up. Frankie Sense and More will be right back after we pay the bills.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Late afternoon snacking can really be a challenge. Vending machines seem to be everywhere, whether you are in an office building, hospital, or school. While most vending machine snacks are not low-calorie, there are a few smart picks. Weight Watchers recommends choosing an energy bar, a cereal bar, or a trail mix that does not include candy. Avoid peanut butter cups, frosted pastries, cookies, and chips. Sometimes all it takes is a diet soda to curb that late afternoon hunger. While diet soda is not a healthy choice, it keeps calories low and fills you up until you can get some wholesome food. The best course of action is to plan for those energy dips and long hours by bringing in fresh fruit, low-fat cheese, and yogurt. Avoiding vending machines is also a good idea. Be sure to plan ahead. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond.
And we're back, and thank you for staying tuned to us because we have a wonderful show still to come. Dean McTaggert is coming up. He is I'm just so excited to have him on the show again. I'm especially pleased because I interviewed him a couple of years ago on Frankie and Johnny, and every time I hear him or I see him live, he makes me happy. And I don't know if it's his great hair or not, but Dean always has this beautiful secret smile on his face. You always think he has a big secret that he's holding back. His professional career started as a lead singer-songwriter for the Canadian pop band The Arrows in 1981. Their independent release, Misunderstood, was followed up by 2 albums for A&M Records, and the hit singles Meet Me in the Middle, Talk Talk, and Heart of the City. Who remembers that? When the band broke up in 86, Dean went on to become a staff songwriter, penning many hits, including Heaven Help My Heart, a top 10 song for country superstar Winona Judd, Dark Horse, what we're going to hear today, #1 in Canada for Amanda Marshall, which Elton John called a surefire hit on Rosie O'Donnell, Birmingham, my personal favorite song, a top 20 song worldwide for Amanda Marshall, as well as hits for Anne Murray, Australian superstar Tina Arena, Terry Clark, Kelly Coffey, John Barry, the list goes on. The Who, Johnny Reed, John McDermott, the Rankin Family, gosh, he's just everybody. My favorite girl, Susie Vinnick, and many, many others. Dean was twice nominated for Juno for Songwriter of the Year, and he has really just written the best of songs for amazing people around the world. How are you feeling?
I feel good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. You know,
after that intro, how could I feel anything but great?
I just, you know, I wish everybody could just see your smiling face right now because I know that you're probably just beaming. You always make everybody smile. It's just something about you.
Well, that's nice of you to say that. I didn't know that I did that, but I'm happy to hear that. That's for sure.
You didn't know that you looked like you had a big secret, and nobody else knows.
No. No, I did not.
That's what you look like. But it's just absolutely phenomenal. And I think that as the years go on, you just get better and better.
Well, thanks. I like to think that there's still a few good years left. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. How many songs have you written this year?
So far this year, I'm working on a couple. I found as I get a little bit older that I'm taking a little bit more time with stuff than I used to. But I like to think the qualities, maybe the songs are a little bit better. So
I think they're amazing. Now you're playing. Are you still playing? You're playing. You play by yourself, and you also play in a band. What's the band now?
Well, I've had a number of bands over the last few years. The last band I had was a band called Ultrasound, which was a 3-piece horn band, sort of an old...
I love that band.
It was a great band, but unfortunately, it's trying to keep 8 guys in line. It was an 8-piece band, especially when they're like me and they've been around the block a few times. And to find a gig that's going to pay 8 guys of this caliber what they're worth is a little tough at times.
Yeah, so for sure.
For the most part, I do the singer-songwriter thing, which is probably what you've seen me do, which is, the writers' nights and stuff. And I love that. Yeah. That's where I feel most comfortable. I can just take my guitar and not worry about setting anything else up and just be myself. And I love those gigs. I've never done a bad gig like that.
Well, everybody surely enjoys you, and if they don't know who you are, they certainly know your music. And we're going to play Dark Horse now, and I'm going to let it play. It's about 5 minutes, I think. We're going to let it play mostly through. It's just amazing.
Summer, Abilene. I was new in town and you were 19. The sparks flew. They called us crazy behind our backs. Romantic fools, we just let them laugh because we knew Maybe a long shot. We could be lonely down the line. Love knows no reason, but we won't let them make up our minds. Our love is riding on this dark horse, baby. My heart is saying it's the lucky one, and its true color's gonna shine through someday if we let this dark horse run. The stars shine brighter in a desert sky. There's no need to wonder or to justify where this will lead. Gave you a locket, our pictures inside. The inscription says the joys in the riding, baby, I believe. But something so secret is something worth this kind of fame. Love knows no patience. Oh, you can't please everybody all the time. Our love is riding on this dark horse, baby. My heart is saying it's the lucky one, and its true color's gonna shine through someday if we let this dark horse run.
Wow, just beautiful. Every single time it's beautiful. It never gets old.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, what came first with that song, Dean? The melody, the words?
We had already written Birmingham when we wrote that, so we just kind of sat down and wrote, for the most part, the music came first. I had the chorus written for. I won't say I had the lyric written. It was, I won't say it was for another song, but I had it done, and once we'd written that music, I brought that chorus. I never get rid of anything as a writer. You always, make sure you've got stuff logged, and
sure.
And I brought it back out, and it seemed to fit, and that song has been a door opener and has done a lot of things for me and my family for the most part. Yeah.
Wow, just beautiful.
Thank you.
I wish you. I want you to stick around, but I wish you continued success. Because you really bring a lot of joy to a lot of people. You really do.
Well, thank you so much.
Do you remember that song, you guys? Do you remember hearing it, Rob?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think I saw the Arrows in their early days. I used to be a musician in a former life, so followed everybody at that time.
Oh, wonderful. That's awesome.
Unfortunately, it was not a hit here in Mexico. and I think only because most Mexicans don't understand American or Canadian sentiment or the language.
Oh, interesting. But the melody's beautiful.
Oh, yes.
The melody is beautiful. Yeah. I want to know about the elephants. Now, because I was reading the report on the elephants, Rob, about the elephants in Canada and how there really isn't one zoo or place that is that can really be recommended for. They shouldn't even be in captivity. Let's start there. Let's talk about the elephants. Their problems
certainly.
And issues.
Yeah, certainly that's an issue that's been a big one for us, particularly in the last few years when we were trying to secure the release of the Toronto Zoo elephants, and then we're able to do that and move them to California. But yeah, if you look right across the board at zoos around the world, or at least urban zoos, you see that the elephants are having a great deal of difficulty. Not only are the populations in captivity diminishing because of arthritis and foot problems and skeletal problems and obesity and elephant herpes virus and you name it. But for those that are surviving, their lives are quite miserable because really they have no ability to do anything that they've evolved to do. So they're kept in these small spaces. They're not very complex. They're not very flexible. So in other words, they're boring. They're not in the proper social context. If you looked at elephants and how they lived in the wild and then looked at how they lived in the zoo, then I think any reasonable, intelligent person would say, hey, this zoo situation isn't very good and we have to do better. So, yeah, in Canada, we've got a real problem with elephants, although the numbers are dropping quite dramatically in Canada.
Dropping because we're getting better at it or dropping because they're dying?
Actually, I don't think we're getting better at it, but they are dying. The Bowmanville Zoo's last elephant died. The Calgary Zoo sent their elephants to the United States on humanitarian grounds. We got the Toronto elephants out. There are still elephants here, but, they are diminishing.
Did one of those elephants die when it went to California?
Iringa was an elephant that when we moved her, we knew, she had the most difficulty. She had very long-term chronic health issues. Mm-hmm. And we were very pleased. She had survived 22 months at the sanctuary, so she was able to gain strength, to climb tall hills, rip down trees, swim in lakes and all that. So, we're very pleased that she had that length of time to end her life rather than just going to another zoo and, to keep her showing up one morning and finding her dead on the floor. But the other two elephants, Toka and Sika, are doing very well. They're doing all the things that elephants like to do, and in fact, all signs are that they're having a really good time.
Because I was reading that elephants like to make decisions. They make decisions, and they can't do that in captivity. They don't get to think.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, that's the case for a lot of animals. When you think about it, they're not automatons. They don't get up in the morning and have everything pre-programmed by instinct. They get up, they make decisions. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Who do I want to associate with? Some of those decisions are very small. Some of them, if you're like an elephant matriarch that's responsible for the safety of the family, then those, decisions can also be life-altering. So, yeah, all animals make all kinds of decisions, and when you stick them in a cage, you restrict or eliminate the ability for them to do that, and that's how they make a contribution to the quality of their own lives. If we take away decision making when we put people in prison, we say your light's going off at 8.
I gotta go to a break. I'm so sorry.
Okay, no problem.
We'll be right back. Just don't go away. We're gonna hear some rock.
Just getting warmed up. Frankie Sense and More will be right back after we pay the bills.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us because we know that quilting changes everything.
It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
Walking is one of the easiest ways to stay fit. A long-term study published by the American Heart Association indicates that women who walk 2 or more hours per week have a much lower risk of stroke than women who don't walk for exercise. Researchers found that walking for 2 or more hours per week resulted in a 30% lower risk of stroke. Walking at a brisk pace for 3 miles per hour or faster translates to a 37% lower risk of stroke. Remember that being active is essential to promoting cardiovascular health, and walking is a simple way of achieving physical exercise. So put on those athletic shoes and sunscreen and head outside for an exhilarating and beneficial walk. For the Fitness Minute, I'm Annette Hammond. To hear other fitness and weight loss tips, visit our website at AnnetteHammond.com.
Do you love animals? Because we love animals. And if you love animals and you love music, then you are listening to the right show today. We were just talking off air about people who don't love animals, and it's kind of hard not to love animals. And as well as we're talking about, having, giving voice to these animals and compassion, teaching your children about compassion. That's one of the things an Active Dog Museum of Compassion wants to do, is teach the next generation how to be compassionate for animals. And that's Rob's books do that. He's got 7 of them. One is called 5 Elephants, and you've got No Shelter Here, Making the World a Kinder Place for Dogs, On Parade, The Hidden World of Animals and Entertainment. People love to go to the circus, but man, those animals are not well treated.
No, they're not. And I think once people find out what's going on, a significant percentage of them decide not to support those kinds of businesses that use animals. And we're seeing that with the circus industry. It's gradually going to go the way of the dinosaurs. All over the world, it's being challenged successfully. Many countries are banning wild animal acts in circuses. And I think probably the key thing that's happened in North America recently that shows where the trend is going is that Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, which was the largest private circus in the world, they announced that within a year or two they will completely phase out the use of elephants. So, the writing's on the wall. We're going to see success for the animals with regard to circuses and those types of acts.
I read somewhere, I can't remember where I read it, that you wrote something about exotic animals, that we shouldn't have exotic animals, that we shouldn't keep them, like snakes and tarantulas, I don't know, different kinds of animals.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I've believed for a very long time. And in fact, I used to keep exotic animals when I was a kid. I had all kinds of reptiles and fish. And one day I looked at them and thought, wow, what a miserable life they lead. I get something. I get this nifty hobby. Maybe in front of my friends, it increases my worth to them or my profile to them a little bit. But it was completely one-sided. I got something out of that hobby, but the animals got nothing except misery and death. So, part of what we're doing in my organization now is we're going to try to change the paradigm for a lot of these animals that are traditionally kept as exotic pets, particularly the small animals like the reptiles, amphibians, fish, and birds. A lot of people treat them like they're sort of biological robots, but these are animals that if you look at the science, they share all of the same cognitive, emotional and social capabilities that we have. It varies in degree, but they have them. They're not these biological robots that can be kept in small containers or glass aquariums or drawers. They need to have their needs met if we're going to be humane to them.
Some animals probably like to be on their own, and other animals like to be social. So, it's really knowing your animal, too.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems with the exotic pet trade. Like if you look at reptiles alone, there's 700 species in trade. Well, very few of those species have ever been comprehensively studied in the wild, and yet they're coming into people's homes in North America, Japan, and Europe. And people are just, by trial and error, trying to keep them alive, and that's why 90% of them die within 24 months of reaching the consumer.
Oh, wow.
Think about that if it were dogs. If shelters adopted out dogs and 90% of them died within 24 months, well, people would be outraged about that. But it's commonplace for these other animals, and that's something we have to change.
You were a former Humane Society inspector. How are we doing? How are we doing in Canada?
Well, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. I think the trend in humane societies is towards things that are good: group housing of dogs, connecting with rescue organizations, moving dogs around on an as-needed basis, making shelters more people-friendly so that people actually want to come to them, expanding their opening hours to make them more accessible for adoptions and things like that. So I think there's a lot of trends in humane societies and shelters that are very good, and hopefully that will continue in the future. But that's not to say that the problems have been solved, because there's still huge problems with discarded and unwanted dogs, and certainly with cats as well.
I think one of the things you have to look at is we need to teach compassion at a very early age. I mean, children have it, but we tend to educate it out of them as opposed to impact that and make it nurtured.
Yeah, I think that's 100% correct. I've hardly met a kid that didn't want to help animals and that didn't love animals. And in fact, when I go to schools, sometimes I'll talk to 1,000 kids and I'll ask, who likes animals, who has animals and all that, and most of them put up their hands. There's this tremendous receptiveness to being humane, to learning about animals, to wanting to help them, and I think it is drummed out of them to a certain extent. And certainly, we've even heard that with vet schools where people go in wanting to be a vet to help animals, and that whole perspective is drummed out of them, and a lot of them end up quitting. So that's something we definitely have to change.
Wow, I was going to be a vet. First thing I was going to be.
Me too.
It's so interesting though that man, now I go see vets because I got a dog who ends up being, I don't know, sick a lot. But every vet is, and I let him choose his vet. We went around to different vets, and I said, okay, you choose the one that you like because you're the one who has to see him or her. Wow. And he did. Yeah, it was interesting. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I'm not trying to say that vets don't care. There are many vets. We work with many of them that do care very deeply about the animals that they work with and animals generally. But, in vet school, there's certainly quite a number of people that, that sort of animal rights perspective that they want to bring to their industry is sort of downplayed or discarded or put aside.
I mean, I was at a vet, and they've got every day they're putting a new pet out in their lobby. And it didn't feel like, it felt like a puppy mill. It didn't feel like, here we're going to save these animals.
Yeah.
And they were charging a lot of money. And I thought, that's just ridiculous. You guys shouldn't be doing that at all. Didn't seem appropriate to me.
Yeah, well, certainly there are vets that are more business focused or have other interests, perhaps, but hopefully they're in the minority, and hopefully the progressives within the industry will, pull it along with their views.
Well, this Christmas, I was fortunate enough to be able to buy all my kids Rocky and Friends, which is the SPCA's new program here, where you can buy a bunch of stuffed animals. These were based on real animals that were saved by the Humane Society, and then that money goes to continue to further saving other animals, which is really cute and something was really great for kids and grandkids. If you have any and you wanted to help them, I would suggest you go and buy that.
It's a great education tool as well.
Yeah.
Could I ask where are Rob's books available? Can I get them online?
Yeah. Get them on Amazon.
Any traditional booksellers can.
Amazon or something like that?
Yep. Throughout the United States and Canada.
I found them all on Amazon, Dean.
Good to know.
Yeah, and they look great. They look beautiful. And I think it's, the kind of thing that you want to teach children to understand. Maybe, like I live maybe 15 minutes from African lion safari, and I've never been because I don't believe in it. I think it's just cruel and inhumane to take your car. People go, oh, the monkeys are going to wreck my car. Who cares? But it's just a horrible in marine land. I haven't gone to marine land in 30 years. I didn't take my kids. I said, sorry, we're not going. I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people say, how do you, it's there, so maybe I should go. No, if you don't go, at least you're giving voice to, I'm not supporting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, on one level, that's the answer, that people don't support these businesses. And if they don't, they won't be profitable and they won't be around for very long. Unfortunately, a lot of people still do, although the numbers are static or declining for many individual institutions. And I believe that's the case with Marineland, particularly after the last few years of controversy that they've been facing.
Yeah, right. With the CNN documentary, I know that there was a lot being said that didn't.
Is SeaWorld still up big down there in San Diego?
Yes, but they're changing a lot of their formulas of how they treat animals and such. I mean, the Blackfish just about closed them down.
Yeah.
Oh.
And, that controversy really brought it home to people how important it is that we think of these as they are, businesses. They're not institutions of compassion, they're a business. And I think that's where people get caught up, because they feel taking my children there educates them about, these animals. When yet these animals in the background are being tortured, they're being, locked in cages, they're not given the freedom to move around.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, Blackfish, expose the illusion of SeaWorld, and that's something that hopefully will happen with many other institutions, because when you go to even a place like the Toronto Zoo, what you see is a sanitized perspective on the animals. It's designed for the visitor rather than the animals, and it's even more so in other types of places. Like a lot of people who go down to Marineland and look at the beluga whales, they don't know that those belugas, or many of them, were snatched from the wilds in Russia. They don't know how these animals originated. They don't know how they're handled. In the case of many terrestrial animals in zoos, they don't know that the animal that they see in that nice cage during the day, maybe when the keepers go home at 4 o'clock, it's stuck in the stall in the back, and then is let out at 9 the next morning. So there's a lot of things that people don't know. And once they learn them, their perspective does change. We've seen this very substantively in many people.
Yeah, I think it would. I remember the old Riverdale Zoo, and then I think when the big zoo happened out in Pickering, in Toronto, people thought, wow, like they get to roam, they get to, but it's still not enough. It just wasn't big enough. Just not good enough. Exactly. I remember when I was a kid doing projects, school projects on the Riverdale Zoo. Yeah. And then I thought the Toronto Zoo was very good when it opened, and I have to admit that when it did open 35 years or 40 years ago, it was quite innovative. But today, it's not. It's a tired old zoo, and it desperately needs changed, especially from the philosophical perspective.
Right.
Wow. Well, when we come back, we're going to go to break shortly, I think, in about another minute and a little bit. So we got another minute and a little bit to talk. But I want to know where all the places that you've been, where the animals that you saved, and how we can help save animals. I mean, those bears in China are just, it just drives me insane when I think about those poor bears, just tied up to a log and like, what a life. I mean, I'd rather go shoot them, really. I'd rather go shoot them all than have them have to live like that.
Yeah, it sounds very, very, very harsh, but for many animals, in many circumstances, they would be better off dead. And like a veterinarian friend of mine says, death is not a welfare issue, life is. Yes. And I think if you're faced with an impoverished, horrible life of suffering or dying, that probably the animals would say, well, give me the dying. Right. But how can people help? I think the way is that you just have to do something, anything. Find your place on the continuum and always seek to improve. It can be 10 minutes a week. It can be devoting your whole life, but find your place and always seek to improve. Do something.
Perfect place to go to a break. Perfect.
Okay.
Stick around. We are going to come back.
Getting warmed up. Frankie Sense and More will be right back after we pay the bills.
This is Uncommon Sense for Leaders, a forum for exploring leadership from the intellect, the heart, and the spirit. Whether you're a leader now or aspire to be a leader in the future, you owe it to yourself to learn about the big ideas that have shaped the careers of compelling communicators, masters of influence, and highly effective leaders. Uncommon Sense for Leaders. Tune in to hear thought-provoking ideas on every aspect of leadership. You can expect dynamic discussions with special guests, quick tips you can apply immediately for better results, and the tools you need to take you from where you are to where you want to be as a leader. Are you ready to crack the code for achieving unprecedented results? Then join the host for Uncommon Sense for Leaders, Catherine Carlisi, every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on the All Business Radio Network. It's the Fitness Minute with fitness expert Annette Hammond.
According to Health Day, nearly half of all sports injuries suffered by middle and high school age children are due to overuse. Several sports that used to be seasonal are now becoming year-round, and the child uses the same muscles and motion over and over again and can sustain injuries. People think playing year-round is supposed to make them better, but more isn't always better. Young kids are a lot more vulnerable because they have cartilage that's soft, muscles that are weak, and they're still growing. Physical activity is important for children and adults alike. Just be sure that you are cross-training and doing several different types of activities so that overuse injuries do not happen to you or your children. Keep your children on the field or court and out of the operating room. I'm Annette Hammond. If you're a fan of Fitness Minute, like us on Facebook at Fitness Minute with Annette Hammond.
And you're still here because you must love animals and you love music. So that's amazing. I want to know where Rob has gone in his travels to help save the animals. And we want to talk about how you can save animals because, who doesn't want to do that? We can save the dogs with an active dog. And let's see how we can save some wild animals who really, really need our help. Who's desperate? Rob, who's desperate for us?
Oh, take your pick. There's no shortage of issues out there, and it doesn't matter where you're situated in the world. You can be in India, China, Singapore, Toronto, London. It doesn't matter. There are animals in need, and many of them are domesticated animals like cats, dogs, domesticated livestock. Many of them are wild animals. And I think what people need to do if they want to help is find something, an issue or an animal that they're passionate about, and learn about the realities that those animals face or that species face. And then you have to figure out how can you contribute to resolving the problems that these animals face. And like I said just before the break, sometimes that may be just sitting at your computer and looking up, who do I write to? It could be 10, 15 minutes a week. For other people, and I know people who have done this, they drop everything that they're doing in their lives, including their professions, and they become full-time advocates for animals. Not everybody can do that, but, everybody can do something. So find that animal and that issue that you're passionate about and figure out within your life how can you make a contribution to helping that animal out.
Nice. Dean, have you ever been to the donkey sanctuary near Cambridge?
No.
It is bring your grandkids out there. It's amazing. I adopted a couple of donkeys out there, but these donkeys, they've been on farms or they've been in different places, and a lot of them have never, they came crippled because they didn't have their toenails shorn or anything, and so they have these beautiful donkeys, and they're all just there being cared for and wandering around and being donkeys, which is really nice.
In Cambridge?
Yeah, it's just kind of near Cambridge, Guelph area. I don't know Kitchener. I don't know what they call it because it's kind of just out. Maybe it's Puslinch.
Do they have a site online that I could find out? Exactly
Yeah. Look up the Donkey Sanctuary, and you can go there. And it's a farm, so they have education, but they also have a little store, and you go pet the donkeys and meet donkeys and stuff. Yeah, it's kind of fun. I wanted to ask you, who's the kindest to their animals? What country?
Oh, geez, that's a very, very difficult question because it depends on which animals you're talking about. But I think if you were to look at which country has sort of an entrenched ethic, both legally and politically and culturally, that favors animals, I would probably say India. Now, that doesn't always manifest itself in real life, but certainly it's there. I'll give you an example. India, a number of years ago, banned 4 types of animals in circuses, so lions, tigers, sloth bears, and I think there was one other type of animal. And even though they're faced with a litany of problems in India, infrastructure, poverty, all of that, their ethic is so entrenched that the government said, if we're banning these animals, we have to provide them with lifetime homes. So they funded building sanctuaries for these animals to go to.
Wow.
That's something that in Canada, never in a million years would that happen. But it happened in India. So, I think India, in terms of that ethic, is probably one of the most evolved. Scandinavia is good on some issues. And then you really have to cherry pick issues in other countries. But, there are some bright spots. There's a lot of dark negative spots, but there are some bright spots as well. And I think we could all learn in terms of the ethics and how to incorporate them into our society. We can learn from India for sure.
I like that. I guess China would have to be near the worst.
I wouldn't say so. I would say that for China, we're going to see a lot of changes. Just by virtue of their population, I think it's 1.2 billion now. The scale of the problems are huge. But with the growth of China, and particularly the growth of the middle class, which is about 400 to 500 million people now, there is a growing animal ethic. And the last time I was in China, because I've done some work in China, the biggest news item in all of China was involving a magician who used a number of goldfish in an act, and this was the discussion all over China in the media. Was this magician being cruel to these goldfish? That would never happen in Canada. If a magician was using goldfish, we wouldn't have any national discussion in the media about it, but it happened in China. And I
remember working in a bar, and the guy came in and he was eating goldfish. So. Exactly.
But, in China, this was the big item of discussion the last time I was there. And the growth of animal welfare groups, it's still in its infancy, but the numbers are exploding. So I think in China, even though it's a communist country, we may see in the not too distant future movement in the direction of protecting animals that is much, much more progressive than we see here.
I think modern communication has helped that because, YouTube alone probably has more horrifying videos of animal cruelty than any other resource in the world. And, that is international, and I think that's helping a great deal.
I agree.
Absolutely, and for many animal advocacy groups, the internet is the great equalizer. Whereas before, it was very labor-intensive trying to cultivate media and get your message out there. It's somewhat democratized now. Even small groups can utilize the internet in a cost-effective way and get the message out there to large numbers of people. So I think the internet has been a major factor in helping to push issues forward.
Oh, yeah. I think I signed 3 petitions today already. 3 petitions, and my daughter-in-law saved a cat. She sent the pictures around on Facebook, from a truck. Sure daft. And, it's great. It is. And, I mean, unfortunately, though, it goes the other way. There's a dark side. And even though, I'm speaking about the dentist who was vilified, which was a little bit overmuch. What he did was horrific, but I don't think he deserved to have his whole life torn apart necessarily. By what he did.
Certainly there are opportunities for people to exploit, the internet for whatever purpose they want, and there's a lot of information on the internet that isn't vetted by anybody, so people can say pretty much what they want, and if they're damaging somebody unfairly, their reputation or their business or whatever, then that damage can be done before anybody can respond or before there can be any mitigation whatsoever. So there is a dark side to it for sure.
It's kind of interesting is you mentioned India, and not that there aren't a lot of intelligent, educated people in India, but it doesn't seem to follow necessarily that if you're educated or if your country's wealthy or, anything like that you're going to treat animals any better than anybody else.
No, it doesn't. It's very interesting because one would assume that if you're an affluent country, then you can afford to be kind to animals and do the things that favor their interests. But what we've found is that, and this is included in North America when you look at, individuals, that people who don't have much themselves tend to be more empathetic.
That's true.
It's not a hard and fast rule, but you do see that trend where people who don't have much themselves do care or seem to care more about animals. And we encountered this. I went on this earthquake relief thing in remote villages in Peru to help dogs, and the communities were devastated. The people had nothing. All their buildings had fallen down, and we set up dog clinics, and those people were so caring about their dogs. They came from miles to get their dogs vetted and treated, and they had nothing. Their houses had fallen down. And this is something I've seen all over the world. People that don't have much seem to care more. Maybe they can relate better to the animals. I don't know.
Not just animals, to people. They let people in. They feed them. They have nothing, yet they'll still feed them,
true.
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
I just want to ask an arbitrary question. What you said about vilifying the dentist because he went to Africa, or was it Africa or India?
Yeah, he went to Africa.
And shot
on a wild animal.
If he had come into your backyard and shot your dog,
right,
the country would vilify him even worse. Why is it that we have compassion for our own pets, but yet we can dismiss a person hunting a wild animal? And
I don't dismiss it.
Yeah, no, I know. But that's where I find a lot of people, they have a disconnect. How is it that we
But it
as
wasn't
humans
just that he
have
killed
disconnected?
him. He beheaded him.
Right.
That's disgusting.
It was cruel and unusual.
Yeah,
yes.
cruel and unusual.
But maybe vilifying him was actually a good message to the rest of the world for this issue. And Africa is one of the cruelest places in the world for animal treatment.
But they had this reserve, and he was on a reserve. That's what happened. The lion was on a reserve, protected sanctuary, and he got killed. Now, the dentist said it was his trapper, whoever, guide, who pointed him in the wrong direction and said this is okay, but it wasn't okay. So I think that's...
From my understanding, they baited the animal, too, to get him to a place where they could shoot him.
Where it was okay. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that entire case really highlighted the realities of much of big game hunting, and it actually created sort of a spin-off discussion about whether or not there's any real value in this in terms of conservation, because most of the studies that are out there show that the purported benefits of allowing people to go and hunt animals as trophies that sort of trickle down to local communities and others, they actually don't really exist, or not in any substantive ways. So I think there may have been a benefit from this whole thing in a much broader way than just dealing with this one case.
Dean, can you tell people how to find your music?
Basically online, or get a hold of me through Facebook, and that's the easiest way.
Everybody knows you on Facebook. They're all your friends. The whole world is listening to this. Tell people where to go. Amazon?
Actually, just message
CD
me
Baby?
on Facebook. That's the best way.
Okay, Dean McTaggert.
Yeah, on Facebook. I'm doing everything independently these days.
Okay.
As a lot of my friends are, and that just works out better.
And Rob, you're at Zoocheck.com, www.zoocheck.com?
That's correct. So anybody that wants to reach us, they can easily look us up look up our website or online through other.
I just want to make sure I got that in there. We got only another minute left to the show.
And they can go to roblaidlawbooks.com as well.
That's right. And Amazon.
Yes, if anybody's interested in the books, or just look up my name on Amazon, and they'll all pop up.
Beautiful.
Well, I want to thank each and every one of you so much for coming on the show. We're not going to be able to stick around after the show and allow me to say that to you, because my producer has to go directly to another show. So I'm going to thank each of you right now. Arlie, thanks for coming and hanging out today. I appreciate that. As
always, it's a joy and a privilege. Always.
And Rob and Dean, I wish you all the very best in the future. And if there's anything I can ever do to help either, please let me know.
Very enjoyable.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Right.
And thank you, Karina, for producing the show today. And wherever you are in the world, I thank you for tuning in, and we will be back next week, same time. Bye now.
See on the beat, Hit Rash Production.
Shit, now you be the one way to turn my world.